Hello, and welcome to a new edition of Education's Best Medicine. And thanks for watching. And remember, community access is your best bet. Please listen to whenever you can. Please support our station, support Believe Radio, support all the community outlets to try to provide you different, insightful information. Uh, this is March. Oh God, March. It seems like the years are passing real fast. I wanted to put a special shout out. Just heard Mr. Dwayne Wiggins of Tony just passed. Uh, our our heartfelt condolences go out to the family. If you grew up in Oakland in the last 30 years, you heard his music, you heard Tony. He told the evolution of what our music was Too Short. All those folks, bury your products. One thing, Too Short, he's getting ready to invest in the Oakland Ballers. Uh, again, we want those things to happen. Appreciate you. It's also on a lighter and positive note. Hey, I'm gonna go buy Hyphy Burger in Oakland. Look, I'm about supporting African American best business and giving support. It's gonna be right near McClimas High School, so gotta go check it out. We'll see what's going on. You'll be getting rave reviews over TV, so we'll see. Um, I think first of all, there's a series of things we're talking about, and um, it's a couple of things going on in March. Uh, Women's History Month, uh, and we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about let's just get started. I got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about, so let's just keep it moving. Uh, Women's History Month, and questions about how we celebrate it. Its importance? I just think we need to be reveling. If you are living and breathing at this point and hearing or seeing me, someone, a woman, took you to term and risked her life to have you. That's woman history enough, and to celebrate, enough said. I want to thank all my Facebook folk. Mark, yeah, his and his family, I love him. Again, one of the original folks that helped us start Education is the Best Medicine, along with the executive producer, Bernard Fisher. Want to give a special shout out to Berkeley Community Media. Again, one of those places that offset me, as well as Chuck Johnson of Soul Beat TV. Just huge, huge. But Women's History Month. So what's the actual discussion on? So it's a celebration that grew out of a week-long celebration. This is from GPT Chat. Uh, and it grew out of a week-long celebration. Remember, black women only had a week, huh? They had to graduate up to a month. Maybe next time it'll be a year, right? So, because every day is women's history, particularly African American women's history. I'm going to highlight some of those women that I think that weren't covered in history enough, but they're significant. And so it grew out of an actual week-long celebration uh, to that talked about women's contributions to culture, history, and society. I again want to put a great shout out to Dr. Lenore. He and I are doing a podcast that I'll be hosting. He'll be coming in as a medical expert to talk about just general stuff. We're going to be kind of spreading it all over the community, all the Bay Area, and all over the world. So look for it. I want to thank again some of those phenomenal women, Barbara Howard, Edie Akamoto, all the women that have touched my life in some form or another. Thank you very much for being the people that you are and continue to add a light to my life. Thank you. I want to also give a special shout out to my granddaughters, but the special little lights in my world. And we're going to have some fun. It's going to be a mad time. It's, historically, we've always been a people that had to be diverse and had to move with the changes of the time. That's what we're dealing with now. We're dealing with, my degrees, and one of my degrees is in organizational behavior. So that systems change, and that's what we're dealing with now. Systems change, And I always say the hardest change to make is a behavioral change. So along with systems change and behavioral changes, we're at a really nexus in terms of what we need to be doing. And this is not the time to be silent. This is not the time to crawl under a rock. This is not the time to not make your views as an issue known. Um, so the actual celebration started. It was organized in, believe it or not, Sonoma, California in 1978, and it was the onset of presentations of in the schools of hundreds of students participated in a real woman essay contest and parade in a parade that was held in Santa Rosa. Now, we shouldn't have to not acknowledge women and their contributions. And right now, in my mind, there's a terms of a minimization of women and their contributions, and only women being used for vessels to produce children, and they should be barefoot and pregnant and shut up. And I don't think that's the way. That's not the way my mom is. That's not the women that I know. So can't call it. I got to keep going with it. So we have to be actively engaged in this discussion, not only for women's rights but human rights. And so, well, a few years later, it caught on, and in 1980, well, 1980 is important because in 1981 I start my training in Stanford. So this celebration is only about 30 years old, from all intents and purposes, maybe 35. And then President Jimmy Carter, bless his soul, he just recently passed, issued the first presidential proclamation declaring March, the week of March 8th, as the National Women's History Week, which is now turned into a month. The U.S. Congress followed suit the next year, passing a resolution establishing the national celebration. 6 years later, the National Women's Project successfully petitioned Congress to expand the event to an entire month March, and that's why we're where we're at. So, instead of these things just happening, there's always been a constant drumbeat to acknowledge women and their contributions. And I say, all you gotta do is look at the woman that had you and understand she made a contribution to you being on this planet. Thanks, Mom. Thanks to moms of the world. Thanks to all those mothers and grandmothers and aunts that made us who we are. And so, um, again, he had to petition Congress to get it going to a month. And the celebration of both American and Women's History Month is essential to recognize African American women who made significant contributions, and this is where I took it in. Although the discussion is significant about women and women history in America, I have to acknowledge that women throughout, and those black women that have not been as significant in history because you never heard of them. Now, we always hear about the Sojourner Truth and I think Minimal, but you didn't hear about Fannie Lou Hamer. You didn't hear about Mary Prince. You didn't hear about Bessie Comey. You didn't hear about Colette Colvin. You didn't hear about Dr. Maggie Lee Walker. You didn't hear about Shirley Chisholm. You didn't hear about Zora Neale Hurston. You didn't hear about Maria Makeba. She's a famous singer, just totally just rocked the place. And of course, Rosa Parks. Let's take Mary Prince. She was a Caribbean-born, formerly enslaved woman who wasn't formerly enslaved in 1619. If you're the ancestors of African Americans, you were formerly enslaved. Own it. Her contribution, she was born in Bermuda but moved to England and eventually to the United States. She became the first black woman to publish an autobiography in the UK. Her book, The History of Mary Prince, detailed her experience as an enslaved woman about raising awareness about slavery and galvanizing the abolition movement in both America and England. So I had never heard of Mary Prince, but definitely, huge in our freedom. Sojourner Truth, born in New York in 1797. Though born in New York, Sojourner Truth was really born in slavery in New York. Did you know that there was slavery throughout the United States? It wasn't just a Southern issue. It was a American issue. That's why it was an American legacy. That's why it's an American issue. because the entire country at some point was either benefited from slavery or had slaves or both. Sojourner Truth, she again born in New York. She was born in slavery, of course. She was a leading abolitionist and women's activist. Um, her famous "Ain't I a Woman" speech. You should go look it up. She says, "Ain't I a woman?" You know, and what she was saying basically that I bear children, I worked crops, I've done the work. That still makes me a woman, but in 1619, she was a beast of burden. She was the mammy. She was the sexual plaything of any male that chose to do that. And men were too. Not only were women raped in slavery, men were raped also, and children. That's why we woke. That's why they don't want to talk about slavery. That's why they want to forget it because anyone or anybody as a system. So let's put it like this: anytime a country slash America codifies, puts slavery in their constitution, it embraces it. It emboldens it. It says that that is what we think you are as a human being in the society. Crazy, right? But that's true. Ain't I a woman? Go look it up. Go read about a black woman that in during slavery made such a real mark. And I want to thank all people who follow me on Facebook. Appreciate you. Love you all. Get the word out, please. We talking real talk here. We talking real truth. It ain't comfortable, but it's real. And it should embolden you to understand and look and understand the history by which you are here. You know, these are all. So we stand on the backs and the shoulders and the breasts and the vaginas of black women. That's where we stand. You didn't get here not being born as an African American by a woman of color. You didn't make it. Bessie Smith. Bessie Smith was the first Native American woman to hold a, Bessie Coleman, 1892 to 1926. I think about Bessie Smith, the singer. Bessie Coleman contributed. Bessie Coleman was the first African American woman and the first Native American woman mixed to hold a pilot license. Something interesting. Native Americans and African Americans have a connection in America. We were both displaced. We were both made beast of burdens. We were both traumatized by the system called the American system. She faced both racial and gender barriers in her pursuit of aviation. Later became a prominent figure in the fight for equality in the air among civil rights issues. So she was one of the first pilots. Hey, don't tell me black women don't do a whole bunch of stuff. You just gotta read the history and quit listening to the hype. Claudette Colvin, born 1939, contribution before Rosa Parks. We talked about this. Before Rosa Parks, a 15-year-old Claudette Colvin was arrested for refusing to give her her seat on a segregated bus in Miami, Alabama in 1955. Why is that important? That's the first year I was born. So we have first young black woman. I mean, that's my connection with Claudette Colvin, who was really the first individual to do and start the boycott by refusing to give up her seat. The other thing I significant, all this is in women's history, is that we have to always remember the lynchings and those that died and were murdered for absolutely no reason but being African American. Not talking to white women, not being disrespectful to anybody, just being a person, male of color. And and they said her defiance was the early catalyst of the civil rights movement, though her story was often overshadowed by Miss Parks. And why is that? Because of the politics. You couldn't have a young 15-year-old. You could, as a spokesman for the civil rights movement. It might have been better because people don't get tied up. But to understand that in our history, the first person to initiate refusal to give up her seat to a white person was a young African American woman. Don't tell me young black folks can't do anything. Don't tell me young Africans don't do anything. Don't tell me young Africans don't have a historical piece. Just understand that and move out of their way. Dr. Maggie Lena Walker. So why am I spending all this time? Because Women's History Month slash year slash infinity has to include black women. They're so significant in this history. They're so significant in their meeting the moment and putting themselves in danger and risk because they wanted freedom for their people, our people. So Dr. Maggie Lena Walker, 1864 to 1934. Dr. Maggie Lena Walker was the first African American woman to charter a bank in the United States. She founded the St. Luke Penny Savings Bank in Richmond, Virginia, providing financial services to black communities and empowering economic independence. Oh, surprise. As we moved out of slavery and we went to these institutions to borrow money, to get a house, to improve we were refused. We were redlined. We were provided with loans with sharecropping. We always never had it free and clear. Our interest rates were always lower. They refused to loan in Berkeley to uh, uh, allow you to move above, I think it was Ashby. If you moved above Ashby or you moved above, which is now Martin Luther King, you were out of your league. That's a discussion that we always have to have. The next is Zora Neale Thurston, and I like her. She was almost like, you think about her, you think about um, Billie Holiday. You think about these women that had to stand up and stood out and suffered because of it. You know, suffered from the trauma of being the first, suffered from the trauma of being so gifted, suffered from the trauma of having to deal when white men screaming, hollering you, calling you all kind of nasty names because they wanted you. That was the problem. You know, my mom said when somebody say they don't like you, they really do. They just mad because you don't talk to them. And I kind of relate to that. Zora Neale Thurston was a prominent African American writer, an anthropologist, and activist during the Harlem Renaissance. Her most famous novels, Their Eyes Were Watching God, explores African American women experiences and became a key text in the feminist literature. Did you hear about it? Did you know about Norma Zell Houston? I had heard about her in passing, but didn't know. You got to get your history straight. Mary Makeba. She was known as Mama Africa. Mary Makeba was a South African singer who became internationally a symbol for anti-apartheid movement. She used her music to raise awareness on the oppression faced by black South Africans and was a strong voice in the African diaspora. These are the women that you don't hear about, but are so significant in what we are and what we do. Go look them up. Go check them out. They deserve a place in our brain because they're historical in their context. And of course, the last one, Rosa Parks, 1913 to 2005. Contributed, known as the mother of civil rights. If she's the mother of civil rights, if she's the mother, then the daughter is Colette Colvin, Colvin, Sarah Colette Colvin, born in 1939. So if we consider, and we do, Rosa Parks to be the mother of the civil rights movement, then Miss Colvin's the daughter and the children and the family and the extensions of that same movement. Her refusal to give her seat to a white man on a Montgomery, Alabama bus led to the Montgomery bus boycott. Go look it up. Go see the video. Go see what happened to us in the fight for freedom. This wasn't a walk in the park. People died. People were injured. People were injured walking across the Norman Pettus Bridge. People were assaulted. People had their homes burned. People were lynched. This wasn't an easy mix, an easy fix. So the election of Barack Obama basically was an election of Barack Obama. It had nothing to do with the change in the culture and the mentality given where we're at right now. I wonder who all the people of color that voted for this current administration, how you feeling? You feeling good? You feeling like you made your mark and now you're with a winner? Okay, we'll see how that plays out. And so what does this do? It encourages us to look at the contributions of women, to celebrate the contributions of women, and to keep it moving. And, well, I'm going to end this piece with some of the best quotes of women, historical quotes. It says, well-behaved women seldom make history. That's Laura Thatcher Ehrlich. There's no limit to what we as women can accomplish. Michelle Obama, the past first lady, who's still living and loving. Says, and here is Maya Angelou. Each time a woman stands up for herself without knowing it, it's possibly without claiming it, she stands up for all women. For all women. Read that again. Each time a woman stands up for herself without knowing it, possibly without claiming it, she stands up for all women. And says, this is Frida Kahlo. Frida was a famous Mexican female artist you should read about. She's just too huge. At the end of the day, we can endure much more than we think we can. Think about that. At the end of the day, we can endure much more than we think we can. Parada Chakra says, I want all girls without exception to have a space for themselves where they have opportunities to be the women they wish to be. Do you think that's happening right now? That women in this space can be the women they wish to be, or are they going to be the women that we're trying to tell them to be, or to mind those women into that? Again, I want to thank all the people on Facebook for watching. Hey, this is Women's History Month. We're going to talk about a few more things, but I want to understand and develop and just kind of wrap ourselves around the fact that you should, thank a woman for being here, because if you don't have a woman, you wouldn't be here. They still don't have all the stuff you can do. You can do artificial insemination and placate, but there's still, it's got to be carried. It's got to be produced, right? We can't do that. Men can't do that. If men tried to have a child, they would die in their physiological state. I tell it to men all the time. You can't have a woman. If you can't have one, what Tupac says, then how can you tell her how to create one? Anyway. Malaja answered, these are some great women. Said, I raise my voice not so I can shout, but so that those without a voice can be heard. We cannot succeed when half of us are held back. Isn't that interesting? She said, I raise my voice not so I can shout, but so that those without a voice can be heard. We cannot succeed when half of us are held back. Half of us. That means if women are being held back, that's half of our strength, power, work, ability to do things, movement. Just think about if women of color weren't involved in the space project, it would have hit the ground. They were the mathematicians of what we now know as the modern space project. I think Neil Armstrong called on them a lot. He said, have all those women there doing those calculations because they know what they're doing. Watch the movie. Here's one. Girls are capable of doing everything men are capable of doing. Sometimes they have more imagination than men, and I guess can be more peaceful and understand and be spiritual and share. What's wrong with that? Hmm. Men do cry, by the way. The one thing that made me cry is my mother upset. My mother was upset, and had a hand in it. I felt really, really bad about that because she had done so much and continued to do so much, and raise a grandchild. Her grandson, Kenyatta, you should thank your grandmother for raising you, for being that person for you. Don't ever forget her. She never forgot you. Um, when women lose themselves, the world loses its way. We do not need more selfish women. What we need now is more women who have detoxed themselves so completely from the world's expectation that they are full of nothing but themselves. What they need are women who are full of themselves. A woman who is full of herself, knows and trusts herself enough to say and do what must be done. She lets the rest burn. Hmm. On that, the last one is by Maya Angelou, and I'll read it. Quotes to empower women. I am woman. I am phenomenal. I'm a phenomenal woman. That is me. Speaking of phenomenal women, please, if you can, attend Barbara Howard's Phenomenal Woman every year. It's an event to be attended. And boy, I tell you, it's good. It's gotten better and better as the years gone past. And supportive of it for the last 10 to 15 years, doing just phenomenal work. Again, phenomenal women. Oprah Winfrey, think like a queen. A queen is not afraid to fail. Failure is another stepping stone to greatness. Thank you, Oprah. And I want to say a special shout out to Dolly Parton. Her husband just passed. We wish her well. It was a long marriage, a long time. Again, a man that wasn't afraid of his woman doing better than him. Okay. Dolly said, I think it's the final one. If you are comfortable with yourself and you know yourself, you're going to shine and radiate that, and other people are going to draw to you also. Think about that. Just think about that. All you phenomenal women, all you women out your comfort zones, keep doing that. That's what you're supposed to do. That's how. That's how America is made great again. How about that? So, Madeleine Albright, huge. Our collective experience has shown us that when women have the power to make their own choices, good things happen. I think I will end on that one. So, it brought me into the next thing in March. March is understanding and a discussion around self harm. And I think about that because I think that in mental health, I have a lot of women that and men that self mutilate, and I just didn't kind of understand it until I began to delve into behavioral health issues. And self harm is one of those essential things before you do and try to injure yourself. So it's something that I think that is great to have a discussion with in this particular time and place. And let's talk about it. It says it encourages us today to understand the challenges that are faced by those who self-harm and emphasize the importance of self-support, compassion, and seeking help for those who struggle with this behavior. What is self-harm? Self-harm is known as self-injury or self-mutilation. Again, this is some GPT chat, up to date, a number of the medical issues, and my own clinical experience of doing this for 30 years and seeing what it was. I really didn't understand self-harm. The thing I remember, the young lady coming in and I was getting ready to do her exam, and on her arms and her legs, I saw a series of linear cuts, perfect though. And when I asked her about it, she didn't want to talk about it. I said, we got to talk about this because what's happening? And she admitted she had been cutting herself since her teen years. She was in her late 20s. And so the first thing to do about this is try to open up the dialogue, not stigmatizing anybody, but trying to understand why we're doing this. Mental health professionals tend to add a lot of stigma to their diagnosis instead of just sitting back, trying to understand why the person is doing this and offering support, not looking at people, not looking down at people or promoting more stigmas about the issue. So again, we should support, compassion, and seeking treatment in this behavior. So what is self-harm? Self-harm is known as self-injury or self-mutilation, refers to the act of deliberately hurting oneself as a way of coping with emotional pain, stress, or overwhelming feelings. This can take various forms. But let me read that again. Self-harm is known as self-injury or self-mutilation. It refers to the act of deliberately hurting oneself as a way of coping with emotional pain, stress, or overwhelming feelings. Stress. Stress. Easier said, stress. So, what are those behaviors? Cutting, using sharp objects to make a cut on the skin. And we used to think that it was just a behavior, but now we know it's an underlying issue to more issues of concern: anxiety, depression, trauma, histories of abuse, all those kinds of things kind of have this nexus or its foundation in self-harm slash self-mutilation. So it's cutting, burning, scratching, banging, or hitting one's head, or hair pulling. Interesting issue around alopecia. And alopecia, or the loss and spots of hair in particular areas, isn't necessarily a disease process. It could be from self-mutilation. Picking the hair till you get these perfect circles in your hair, devoid of hair. So again, cutting, using sharp objects to make cuts in the skin. Burning, using heat or chemicals or burns on the skin. Interestingly, people smoking cigarettes would put the cigarette out on their skin. Never understood it till I saw it. And that's what he's doing. He said, that's the way I've always done it. I just did it like that. What you talking about? Okay. But not a behavior you want to emulate or support. You want to talk about what's happening. Again, the whole issue, whether it's your child, your partner, your niece, your nephew, is not to blame, is not to provide stigma. It's just trying to find out what's going on. Because it could be the first time someone's asking what's happening. I know for a lot of my patients, that's the first time it happens. Self-harm is a way for people to express emotional pain. Let me say it again. Self-harm is a way of people to express emotional pain. And it gives them some self-control. It typically relieves emotional numbness. It says it's like a decompress for me, man. When I self-mutilate, when I cut, man, I just feel so relieved. I don't care, the arm could be bleeding like nobody's business. The issue could, and where some places, secondary infection, they still injure the area. Or they go to a clean area to do the same thing. It's not typically intended as a suicide attempt, though it is often associated with a higher risk of suicide. That's what we didn't understand. It usually stopped at, they're not going to hurt themselves or harm themselves, or hurt themselves or harm or anyone else. That's not necessarily the case. I want to thank everyone for watching. I want to thank you. This is Women's History Month. And we're going to talk about discussions around that because women primarily, more than men, do self-harm. And that's what concerned me. I saw these just gorgeous women with all these layered lacerations on the legs and the arms. That was, perfect looking, except for that. It's not typically intended as a suicide attempt, though it is often associated with a higher risk of suicide. Again, not associated with suicide attempts, but it is associated with a higher risk of suicide, or depression, or anxiety, or trauma, or PTSD, or sexual abuse, or something. Again, is a sign of a deep emotional distress to create more and to help to create more compassionate environment for those affected. And that's what our job. That's my job as a clinician, to create a platform for people to talk about that and get them help with a culturally competent provider understands that this is something that needs to be treated. It's an illness, not a personal indictment. The prevalence, interesting enough, self-harm is common among teenagers and young adults, but it can also occur at any age. Exactly. My area isn't pediatrics, but I see those adults. I see those 20s and 30s coming in, issues of self-harm. It's estimated that 13 to 23% of adolescents engage in self-harm at some point. It is more common in females than on males. Why is that? Easy. More pressure on women. More pressure to look perfect. More pressure to look good. More issues around body size. More issues with body dysmorphia. More issues around denigration because now you're not looking like the group. Excuse me, not blonde, blue-eyed with a little slender figure. Well, that hasn't changed now because BBWs are in. Big beautiful women are in. And so here we go in a society that one denigrated women for their body size, breasts, behind. Now put it up as a standard of beauty. Isn't that confusing? Then in the woman's teen, she could have been had issues about her body type, and now it's a body type of choice. But I submit a lot of the women are still in their teenage and don't like their body type or their behavior or their body looks. It's sort of sad, but men have contributed to that, and this whole skinny, gotta look cute stuff, and a white dialogue around the standard of beauty, which is I tell women of color, you'll never reach it because you're not a white female. That being said, how do people self-harm? Well, that being said, 13 to 23% of adolescents engage in self-harm at some point. It is more common in females than males. And for those women that are doing this and men that are doing it, please get help and stop. Please get help and stop. Again, this is March, and I go through and look at what are the things that are on the table in March. Not necessarily, what's going on in the media, but what's going on in general, because these are things I want people to take with them and start helping people that they love help themselves. It says, self-harm is often a sign of an underlying mental health issue such as depression, anxiety, borderline personality disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, being African American in America in a racist society and institutional racism. Man. Structural racism, immigration, sexual preference, all these things contribute to it. So why do people self-harm? Coping with emotional pain. Many individuals use self-harm as a way to deal with the overwhelming emotions such as sadness, anger, frustration, stigma, and not no one understanding, no one asking, no one caring about what's going on. Just think you're supposed to stop. Just stop that. Just stop being black. Just stop being female. Just stop being male. Just stop being LBGT. Stop being incarcerated. Stop. Just stop. Can't do it. You can't turn it off that way. So why do people self-harm? Coping with emotional pain. Many individuals use self-harm as a way to deal with the overwhelming emotions such as sadness, anger, and frustration. Feeling numb or detached. Some people, even discussions around not, and when I say feeling numb or detached, I've had in some of my mental health concerns, I say to you, they're having out-of-body experiences, which means is they believe that when they're sleeping, they can see their body and they're not in it. Almost like Doctor Strange when he does a transition and takes his emotional and mental essence, and he can see himself sitting there meditating or being in the moment. And a high risk issue at that too. And I think that's just the way it is. But it's a mental challenge. Expressing expressing feelings. For some, self-harm is a way to express feelings they feel unable to communicate verbally. That's why I say you have to talk to people. You have to get it out in the open. You have to share it with them. You have to be willing to hear some things you might not want to hear. I know I've heard. And be able to objectively say to them, God, I know this is happening, but I think we can get this fixed. You have to be hopeful for that person when they're not hopeful for themselves. If your issue, oh, woe is me, I don't know what to do, man, then don't talk to them. Find somebody that can be more empathetic and help them in the direction of positive as opposed to putting them down and making it worse, making them feel worse. You ever go talk to people sometimes, when you talk to them, they are uplifting. The other time you talk to them, it's just a worse experience for you. You feel like you're washed in emotion, trauma. Well, again, I want to thank you guys for showing up and showing out. Then we're going to continue this conversation because it's the month of March. And we just got a lot of things to share. Been on my mind, been on my plate. Watch for us in Black Health, uh, our Black Health Minutes. Uh, Myself and Dr. Noor being a lot of health minutes, Black Health Minutes to share things that we're talking about and seeing in practice. And one of his famous, what are you seeing in practice? A lot. My patients are sicker. They have more multiple illness. Their insurances have transferred over to me, and they have at least 10 to 12 problems, and half of those problems haven't been addressed. They haven't seen a specialist. You know, they haven't had their medicines. So they're ripe to be hospitalized and ripe to feel like the system doesn't care about them. So it takes a little bit more time. You have to see people. I have to do documentation over the weekend. And people say, what are you doing with your time? Hey, working. Because you just can't do it in the time frames they're giving us now. So if you really care about that person and care about their care, it's just what I do, regardless of whether I'm paid. Everything you won't get paid for. I have a great um, uh, um, school. I have a great resident board that are not getting paid, but they're doing yeoman's work because they want to be involved in what happens in the decisions that happen on where they're living, where they've lived for 15, 20 years, where their children have grown up. High deal, high deal, high deal, high talk. Risk factors, mental health conditions, people with depression, anxiety disorders, eating disorders, personality disorders, trauma are at more risk of self-harm. So if you ask an African American from 1619 to now, man, we all should be self-harming. We all should be cutting ourselves up. But hey, what did she say? Still I rise. Still I rise. Trauma and abuse. I didn't even look at it, knew it was there. Trauma and abuse, history of childhood abuse, sexual assault, emotional trauma. So if you talk to the African American in 1619, what was happening with him? Child abuse, sexual assault, mental trauma, murder, lynching. And you ask us why our emotional mix is so convoluted because it was created that way. Anytime you bring a person to a land not theirs, take away their language, take away their history, take away their communication, it had to drive us crazy. It had to put us in a millplex that no one wants to deal with because if you shape this beast and then you're afraid of it, or you say that it don't exist, nothing happened to you. I'm surprised. What's really real to home? The current administration met with President Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, and they told him he should have been more grateful. His people are dying. His country has been decimated by an individual entering his country and wanting to make him a slave in his own country. And when he didn't resist, he should be grateful for that. What planet are we on? What planet are we on? And think that he should succumb to a dictator that's invaded his country. Someone that wants to be a dictator, someone that has aspirations of being a dictator? Because dictators talk well with dictators, except China. They ain't talking to China like that. I wonder why. A bully talks to people he can beat up. A bully doesn't talk to his equal. And all these discussions ain't been talking about China except for tariffs, nothing else. Oh, so let's see what plays out now in these United States with a military that's 3/5 people of color, 3/4 people of color. Oh, you want me to go fight? I've already served, thank you very much. I'm a veteran, thank you very much. Warrant officer, thank you very much. While some have never served, they send you to war, but their children haven't served and they haven't served. Interesting issue. Think about it. So, social isolation, feeling isolated or lacking support networks. So I'm wearing blue and gold because I stand with Ukraine, and also blue is for prostate cancer. Excuse me, colon cancer. So we'll talk about that too. Signs and symptoms of self-harm. Physical signs, unexplained cuts, burns, or bruises, particularly in places that are easily hidden, arms, thighs. I wouldn't see these cuts unless the person had a showed skin. And in this time now of modified exams and moving people like McDonald's hamburger, you'd miss it unless you ask. Any cuts or wounds or things that I might need to see the vet, and people kind of like, oh, well, you can see, and it's like series of cuts that you know they did themselves. That's why they didn't show them. That's why they wear long sleeve stuff on arms and legs. Signs and symptoms of self-harm, well, pressure and stress, academic pressure, bullying, relationship problems, feelings of inadequacy or failure may trigger self-harm in behaviors in individuals. It's now I got about 15 minutes left in the show. Just getting started. I got next week too, so I wanted to delve in this because this is Women's History Month, and I thought both these subjects kind of correlated to each other, and I wanted to make sure that we understand that when women have to face all these pressures, then it's going to change them emotionally and psychologically, particularly our young girls. Particularly our young girls about body image and trauma and pressure and stress and abuse. And now we're in a society where women don't really count unless they're the vessels for children. Interesting, huh? So the signs and symptoms of self-harm, physical signs, unexplained cuts, burns, bruises, particularly in places that easily hidden. Behavioral signs are mood swings, avoidance of social situations, or wearing long sleeves or pants, even in warm weather, to conceal the injuries. Emotional signs, mood swings, withdrawal from family and friends, sudden changes in behavior, or expressing feelings of hopelessness or despair. Talk to people. Open up. Talk to my son right now. Got to keep talking. Got to keep talking. As a therapist, got to keep talking. As a mother, got to keep talking. As a grandmother, got to keep talking. As a niece, got to keep as an auntie. Got to keep talking. Because you're the only one they're going to talk to before they hurt themselves. There's a discussion around suicide, know it true. A month before a person commits suicide, they went and seen a health professional. Not necessarily behavioral health, but a health professional, and then sometimes behavioral health. And that was enough to have a discussion in the spring with a depression scale or a anxiety scale to say something's going on here. If you don't know, if you don't ask, you can't find out. The connection between self-harm and mental health. Self-harm is often linked to underlying mental health issues, but it's important to understand that it's a coping mechanism for managing intense emotional distress rather than a sign of wanting to die. So this is how people manage. And if you me, and again, I color this with people of color because our issues are a little bit more intense, and I think we're more likely to commit suicide This again, these are the genres that discuss white white mental health as opposed to people health. And if you've been a subject of trauma and abuse, you're more likely not to be able to cope with that. That's why our issues are different. That's why mental health professionals and people of color have to take that next step and look at it differently. Because that person that in the literature said they're not going to commit suicide, they're just cutting himself, be up hanging in a cell. Don't you think that? And I was talking that all these sideshows are a reflection of African men's inability to cope with the real world strategy problems of life. They are not being feeling like, man, between 15 and 30 haven't went on dates. They don't know what it is to have a relationship with a girl because they're locked into video, porn, cannabis, in a room, dark, quiet, just them and the controller. Don't have to answer anyone, don't have to be responsible to someone. And you continue that particular mix for 10 to 12 years. Again, a lot of these young men now and young women are kind of socially isolated. So how do we help? Reducing the stigma. Self-harm is misunderstood and stigmatized. Many people who self-harm feel ashamed and embarrassed, which can prevent them from seeking help. By raising awareness and fostering open conversations, Self-Harm Awareness Day works to reduce the stigma and encourage understanding. Remember, encouraging the support and help seeking. The day encourages people to reach out for support and whether through friends, family, or professional mental services, talking about the struggles faced by those who self-harm can help create an environment where people can feel comfortable seeking help without fear of judgment. Highlighting treatment options, there are various ways to address self-harm, including cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, dialectic behavioral therapy, which means you're talking back and forth, trauma focused therapy. Again, my model for care is shared decision making, patient as person-centered care, trauma-informed care, and do no harm. Again, highlighting the treatment options, giving people options, helping to express what's going on, and being an advocate for them. Uh, that's why it's so important. Promoting prevention, early intervention, and addressing the emotional and psychological issues behind self-harm can prevent the behavior from escalating. Educating about coping strategies, mindfulness techniques, emotional regulation, and is critical in breaking the cycle of self-harm. Help people help themselves. Don't be the problem, be the solution. Don't blame, understand, and claim. Raising awareness for resources. On Self-Harmless Awareness Day, many organizations and mental health professionals provide resources, hotlines, and support groups for those who struggle with self-harm. Engaging in discussion. Engaging in that discussion and helping people plan to succeed instead of planning to fail. So how can we get involved? Educate yourself and others. I hope we're doing that. Understand the complexity of self-harm and the emotions behind it. It can help from supporting individuals who may be struggling to share accurate information. Be supportive. Use social media. Here we are. Support mental health organizations. And do your best to help who you love help themselves. Because when you do that, you're helping yourself also. Conclusion. Self-Awareness Day is an opportunity to shed light on an often misunderstood issue, to perform support resources for those struggling with self-harm by reducing stigma, promoting open conversation, and encouraging people to seek help. This day helps foster a culture of compassion, understanding, and mental well-being. I think we can do no more and no less than that. And my final note, we got 5 minutes. This is also World Compliment Day. I want to thank you guys for being here. You're great. Love you all. Compliment. World Compliment Day is celebrated on March the 1st of each year. It is a special occasion designed to encourage people to spread positivity through compliments. It is a day to uplift others by acknowledging their qualities, achievements, and the good they bring to the world. And that's what I'm saying to all of you. I want to not all your achievements, all the good that you bring to the world. Because if you see in me, that's what you're about. That's where you want to be. That's what you're trying to do. Leave the negativity at the door. Leave the self-harm at the door. Leave the trauma at the door. Let's keep it moving in a positive vein. You know, you know. Think of Tony, right? Whatever you want. You know, celebrate. You know, gonna miss him. That was you say one of the soundtracks of my life. Tony. Soundtrack of my life. Too Short, soundtrack of my life. Tupac, too short, too sharp. Tupac, soundtrack of my life. Pointer Sisters. If you hadn't heard about, get one of the albums. Tie me to a tree, handcuff me. Hey, golly. So World Compliment Day is celebrated on March 1st. It is a special occasion designed to encourage people to spread positivity through compliments. It is a day to uplift others by acknowledging. So I'm always trying to end the show on a positive note. Hey, compliment somebody. So what would be some of the compliments you can give people if you just didn't think about something off the top of your head? What do you tell people? You have the best ideas. If you're watching me, you got some good ideas. You always find something special in the most ordinary of things. Everyone gets knocked down sometimes, but you always get back up and keep going. Keep it moving. Don't let the doorknob hit you in the back. You're a candle in the darkness. Bring light to a very, very dark community and world. Thank you. You're a great example to others. All of you are. Time you get up, do what you need to do. Take the babies to school, babysit, cook, clean, help, be observant, listen, be quiet. Hey, compliment. Being around you is like being on a happy little vacation. So, some people can be around like a happy vacation. And some people you're around, you can't wait to get away from. Let's not be that get away from person. Let's be that vacation person. Tell someone you have a nice smile or a warm demeanor. All y'all are cute, nice smiles, great demeanor. I tell you, black women are some of the most beautiful women in the world. Thank you, black women. Thank you, black mothers. Thank you, black grandmothers. Thank you, black aunts. Thank you, black nieces. Thank you, black partners. Thank you, back folk that love folk back. Thank you. Let a coworker know that they're doing a good job. How many times you do that? Tell your coworker, hey, you're doing a great job. I try to do it all the time because you have to work with people. You have to get along. We need to be able to get along with people in this time now. This is going to be a dangerous time. We want to get along with people. Tell your spouse or partner every day how much you appreciate him or her and why. You're just a good person. You take care of business. You provide a good meal. You're not too tired. You don't have a headache. Your stomach not hurting. Your back ain't hurting. And if it is, we okay with that because everybody has problems sometimes. That's what it is. No one's perfect. No one's perfect. Only person perfect is Allah God. Compliment your children and tell them that you're proud of them. Thank you, Kenyatta. Thank you, my grandbabies. Thank you, Kayla. Thank you, Kalani. Thank you, all the kids in the neighborhood. All your nieces and nephews. Thank them. Love them. All that. Find something hidden in photos. Now, I'm not a big picture person, but yeah, I got albums over albums. And I stopped taking pictures because like, world's a stage, right? Some I've kept those and stuff. Use idioms for positive. You're the most fun. You're more funner. You're more fun than bubble wrap. Folks, wow. In the time. Thanks for showing in and showing out. Got a few more things next week. We're going to talk about colorectal cancer. We're going to talk about, because that's the blue. We're going to talk about essential tremor month. We got a whole bunch of other stuff to follow up. Please stay with me. Stay on. Stay powered. You know, spread love. You know, spread understanding. Spread peace. And hopefully, like they say, we'll keep it moving. Bye, y'all.